Sonic Forces. It's literally the game that generations should have been. Alright, so I hope I have not confused you with that statement so far, but you know, I was going to make a discussion video about the 2D effect, and you know, there's too much 2D in Sonic Forces, all of that sort of stuff, but my boy Premi the Remy already made an excellent discussion on it, so you guys can just check that out. You know, I wholeheartedly agree with him, but let's get into what I think about this. Now, I'm not going to be talking about how modern Sonic having 2D sections in the game is not good, you know, it's redundant, you know, there's too much of it in that game so far, but what I'm saying is that Sonic Forces has that chance to be what Generations should have been. In what way, you might ask? Well, it's simple. Sonic Generations had that opportunity. Sonic and Classic Sonic met. There are two gameplay styles, and by the end of it, Classic Sonic went back to his own world. Now, what did Sega have an opportunity right here? An opportunity to start a Classic Sonic spin-off series, which, you know, eventually created Sonic Mania. We have our full Classic Sonic 2D game releasing this summer. I'm so excited to play it, honestly. So as you can see, Classic Sonic eventually did get his own side series, which, you know, a lot of people were predicting, and I'm glad that Sega is finally giving Classic Sonic the attention he deserves and at least catering back to those Classic Sonic fans. Now, what did modern Sonic do throughout this time, throughout this entire wait? Well, he started to act more like Classic Sonic. Yeah, while Classic Sonic ended up actually being more of the Classic Sonic he was in the classics, with now Christian Whitehead working on a new engine that is even better and smoother than the actual Genesis physics and all that sort of stuff, modern Sonic ended up changing his direction entirely. Going from the boosting gameplay that we all know at this point, you know, something of a staple for modern Sonic nowadays. Instead, modern Sonic's model got shorter, his quills got shorter, his running animation changed, he got a figure 8 as his running animation, he got the super peel out, he got the spin dash back. What in the world were they thinking? Yeah, I know, Sega tried to appeal to the Classic Sonic fans left over from Sonic Generations and try to force it on modern Sonic. Stop it! Sega had the best opportunity to capitalize on a new Classic Sonic spin-off series at that very point. But instead, they decided to force Classic Sonic gameplay onto modern Sonic, which is not a good way of handling it. Modern Sonic's model is shorter, yes. He has the spin dash once again. He has the super peel out, a ability we haven't seen since Sonic CD, brought back in a modern Sonic game of all things. Of course, yeah, there's a brand new parkour gimmick, but the main thing is that they completely changed what modern Sonic is supposed to be. Modern Sonic is supposed to be that evolution of Sonic. He's supposed to be different from Classic Sonic, and especially now that Sega acknowledged that they're two separate Sonics, I feel like Lost World's direction was terrible for what they were trying to do. In fact, they were trying to bridge that gap of classic and modern Sonic with the Lost World Sonic. You know, he was modern Sonic's design, had the green eyes, had Roger's voice, but they gave him more classic elements, which just felt out of place. And it felt like they were forcing classic Sonic gameplay onto Sonic once again. Honestly, some stages in Sonic Lost World look like they belong in some sort of Sonic 4 of some alternate dimension. And that's why I love playing the classic Sonic mod for Sonic Lost World. It just makes so much sense and it fits so well. What was Sega thinking? I buy modern Sonic games for the new experience that I'm going to be getting in that title. I don't buy modern Sonic games only for them to terribly emulate the classics and forcing them onto some modern Sonic game. I feel like Generations and Unleashed had that concept down, where modern Sonic's levels and games were on the cartoony side, yes, but they did have this realistic lighting as well. It's not completely like out of some sort of cartoon. While there are certain structures and levels that have that kind of old school Sonic feel where there's random loop-de-loops in the middle of nowhere, you know, there's springs everywhere, that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's a Sonic staple at this point. In terms of the modern Sonic games, while they do have some cartoony landscapes, they do have realism, of their global illumination lighting. You know, it's realistic lighting, but in this cartoony environment. But what I was surprised by in Sonic Lost World is that there's this new kind of cel-shaded look. The world looks more cartoony than it's ever looked before. The trees look like Minecraft trees. It completely lost that cartoony but with a hint of realism in there, in favor of just plain straight out of some sort of classic Sonic remastered game. Modern Sonic is supposed to be different from classic Sonic. After Generations, I thought that was going to be the main selling point. Since classic Sonic was established as his own separate character and he would have his own separate gameplay, I thought that would be the end of Sega trying to force 2D sections in Sonic, or trying to make him more like classic Sonic. And instead, what they could do, instead of trying to make modern Sonic more like the classics, is that they could try to modernize him even more, change his stages even more, maybe change and tweak his gameplay to make him even less similar to classic Sonic. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and you know what we got was Sonic Lost World, a very cartoony game which a classic Sonic mod on looks amazing. It looks like it was meant for it. It looks like it was meant to have a classic Sonic model the entire time, which feels wrong. So what am I exactly saying when I state that Sonic Forces has an opportunity that Sega missed out on in the past, but now they could actually reap the rewards of such a decision now? Sonic Forces is the second time classic Sonic made his way into a modern Sonic title. While I'm not going to complain about classic Sonic being in there, I understand it's a marketing strategy, but at this point what they could do is separate them entirely. Classic Sonic already has his own game. What they could keep doing now is keep the Mania team and keep working on classic Sonic titles. And now modern Sonic can fully be separated from classic Sonic. Maybe make his levels more like boost gameplay. I don't know what they'd be able to do with modern gameplay at this point, you know, unless they try to make the levels more open, bigger, all of that sort of stuff, because the modern gameplay, while it does have its shortcomings, it's still very successful. It's a very successful gameplay style that most Sonic fans appreciate. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I can see why Sega would continue using it. So if I were to see classic Sonic get his own spin-off for like Mania 2 and, you know, just keep following that stream, and modern Sonic splitting off into his own modern Sonic boost titles, that would be a great direction for Sonic. Now, how do you fill in the gaps in between releases? Simple, Sega already has the plan in motion, and that's Sonic Boom. Yeah, I know, most people don't like the Sonic Boom games, but what Sonic Boom could be is a way to bridge the gap in between Sonic releases. You know, release a classic Sonic game here, meanwhile just send some other team to work on a Sonic Boom title, or, you know, maybe send Dimps another project to work on in the background while Sega's working on the next modern Sonic game and the Mania team's working on the next classic Sonic game. The amount of resources that Sega has to make this plan work is astounding. Not only do they have an amazing team that cares about Sonic a lot, and that's the Mania team, by the way, that, you know, knows about classic Sonic and they want to keep pleasing the classic Sonic fans. So what they can do is just use Sonic Boom or put some other team on a Sonic spin-off title to bridge the gap in between the next classic Sonic release. And meanwhile, while those projects are in motion, the next modern Sonic game can start production. And just keep going that way. That way Sega doesn't have to rush out titles. That way Sega can keep working on Sonic games while releasing them at the same time. And what Sonic Forces is going to give Sega is another chance to put this system in motion. Sega has everything in place to get this system going, but the problem is they already missed out on this opportunity 5 years ago. And I'm only hoping that Sega decides to actually take that road this time, to actually space out releases, split classic Sonic and modern Sonic as two separate gameplay styles, and keep them going in their own directions. The Mania team can get more creative, try to implement more while still remaining to those classic 2D roots, while the modern Sonic team no longer being restricted to keep nostalgia as part of their marketing or part of the game, they could focus on creating more original concepts and stages. Classic Sonic can focus more on that lighter tone. Classic Sonic can focus on that classic 2D platforming aspect, while Sonic Boom can focus on that light cartoony humor, while modern Sonic games can focus more on a darker, serious tone, but still have some humor inside of it. Overall, they have 3 Sonics at this point. They have Classic, Boom, and Modern. Use them. Not only would it be an effective way of managing the production of Sonic games, but the fact that Sega has DIMPs at their disposal at just about any time also just adds to Sega's resources and amount of people working on the Sonic titles and production. As much as I'd like Sega to work on a system like this, I'm not sure if they're gonna take it, because they've already missed out on their opportunity in the past. I'm not saying I don't have faith in Sega. I think in Sonic Forces, I see that passion, that effort that Sonic Team is trying to convince Sonic fans that they care. If they really care, they should implement a system like this. Then we no longer have to worry about droughts in Sonic news, droughts in Sonic game releases, all that stuff. At the end of it, it's Sega's choice, not ours. If it were up to me, I'd implement a system like this immediately, because Sonic Forces is giving them the chance that they missed out on years ago. And if Sega were to make up for past sins, I'd definitely do this. Not for me, not for Sega, but for the fans.